So Blue Origins, the space company headed by Jeff Bezos, has recently had a sort of like a space tourism flight containing many popular personalities. I have to confess, I only knew Katy Perry. I have no idea who the other people were, but they were all women, and there was a lot of backlash to that. Some of it came from Candace Owens, which we'll talk about, and we'll go to the specific clip where she does talk about that and few other things. Welcome to the Daily Objective. Joining me today is James Valiant. And James, I'll go to you before we go to Candace Owens, just specifically on that space flight and the sort of reaction to it. I mean, to me, whenever I hear sort of another person went to space. I think there was one, who was it? William Shatner, somebody from, yeah, who I think also was able to go to space. And whenever I hear it, it doesn't matter who it is. I'm like, it's incredible. The fact that we are at the point of space tourism, even if it means sort of the lower orbit or sort of, it's not actually the space, but it's still incredible, even being able to go that high. What do you make of reaction? Both sort of, well, there is one side, people saying it was all fake, this didn't happen. But there is also this sort of other side sort of trying to make fun of it, trying to sort of like put it down. Yeah, what do you make of that?
Well, way back when the Apollo missions were first going to the moon back in the late 60s, in 1969, there were important commentators in the United States, names that are probably not known today, but who were household names then in the field of television journalism or magazine journalism, who actually made the argument that we human beings ought not to be spending all of this resources and energy in getting into space at all. Look at the human suffering on Earth, where there's hunger and war going on here on Earth. Why are we focused in any of our attentions on going to space? Ayn Rand herself was very ruthless to the Eric Severides. Government wastes all kinds of money, and she didn't think space should be the province of government. But putting all of that aside, she thought going to space was a glorious thing because of the scientific and technological achievements it was. In effect, it was an ode to humanity and all of the technology it took to get there. I mean, we couldn't have gotten to space if we hadn't developed things like radio communication or electric light or the rocket science itself or the degree of understanding of just space and physics that it takes and engineering that it takes. It was a combined achievement of various sciences and engineers working together to do this remarkable thing. It is a glorious ode to man. And I think when we get to Candace Owens, we'll see her anti-man hatred, her contempt for humanity, which actually is what she's expressing here. If you can look at a great achievement, human beings actually, I mean, it's astonishing, isn't it? Human beings, these terrestrial creatures, you think of any other living organism on this planet, there's no way they could do what we do. It's not done by instinct or trial and error. It's done by rational, careful thought, something never done before and something extraordinary. At one time, people thought if man was meant to fly, he'd have wings. And so they put down the first efforts at mechanized flight. That did not stop the Wright brothers, 120 years ago from developing mechanized flight. And look, that was one of the preconditions of space flight too. Allows us to fly in the air, tons of steel and aluminum and plastic. We get it going at high speeds at 10,000 plus meters in the sky, traveling great distances. That is a huge, tremendous achievement in itself. And it does show the potency of reason and the amazing capacities of human beings. If you aren't proud to see, I don't like collective pride. When people say man has gone to the moon, and man has gone to the moon, but part of my reaction is, were you part of that? Were you involved in that? When we say we went to the moon. But on another level, it does say something about humanity generally. Human beings have the most remarkable capacity. Their rational capacity is a superpower, not a mystical superpower, but it allows us to do extraordinary things. We can split atoms and release the power of suns. We can alter molecules and create new living species. We can shoot golf balls on the moon. We can develop cures for diseases that people didn't even understand etiologically the cause of. Human beings have this extraordinary thing called reason and free will by which it operates. And that is, I mean, if you're not a man worshiper from that, then you don't even grasp the objectivist idea of man worship. And so Ayn Rand was, when she confronted a great human achievement, whatever it was, she acknowledged the glory of humanity in being able to do that. We've gone from the Stone Age, literally, we've gone from the Stone Age where we were making stone tool, chipping stones with other stones to make stone tools, right, all the way to this kind of technology. Absolutely extraordinary. To the glory of man.
Yeah, and talking about the difference in the sense of life, and we'll compare ours to Candace Owens. But you reminded me the quote you said: "If humans were meant to fly, they would have wings." And it reminded me, and it almost made me emotional. A quote from my favorite show, which is, "Humans don't have wings. That's why they look for ways to fly." And
That's
that
it. Humans don't need wings to fly. We can create, we can alter our environment such that we create devices that can actually help have us fly. We fly. Humans fly. And no one told us we weren't meant to, that we were somehow constrained to, that there's a metaphysical law or ethical law against doing these extraordinary things because they increase our well-being, our capacities on Earth, our technology. We now have more options available. We are more powerful. Reason is power. As Francis Bacon said, knowledge is power. And what an extraordinary demonstration of the power of the rational mind.
Yeah, and even I mean, this idea, and this is also sort of a difference, I would say, in sense of life, like the fact that Ayn Rand understood why sort of like going to space is, and it doesn't matter that it was a government, but such a unique sort of like human achievement, and even that, that saying like we went to the moon, the idea that we can. And it's not really collectivistic. It's this sort of like benevolent, sort of collective achievement. The idea that, because what is it talking about? The idea that we can go. It's the primacy of reason. It's the ability that we have reason, and anybody can sort of achieve that if they put their mind towards it. And sort of in that regard, we can all sort of like
Limitless possibilities,
yeah.
the limitless possibilities, the open-ended vistas that humans still have ahead of them. What extraordinary things are humans going to do? If we go back in time, and it would be miraculous, it'd be magical to primitive people what we can do today. And yet there's nothing magical about it. It's simply attending to the facts through the faculty of reason that allows us to have this power. We're attending to, it's the opposite of magic. We're submitting ourselves, nature to be, another thing Francis Bacon said, nature to be commanded must be obeyed. We have understood nature so well that we've opened up this extraordinary menu of options of things we can do. It's a testament to the power and glory of humanity, the rational being.
We have a super chat from PC. Thank you so much. He says Owens is just woke and lost plot. I mean, Douglas Murray talked about this idea of woke right, which I think Candace Owens definitely falls on that.
Isn't that ironic to use a term like woke? Well, whether it's left or wokeism or right wokeism, what it actually is intentional evasion, putting yourself into a coma. It's not awake and aware in the cognitive sense, in the sense of reason, knowing reality. No, it's the equivalent of comatose, and they paradoxically call it woke. Yeah.
We also have a super chat from Jonathan. Thank you so much. A super chat from Bonnie. Thank you so much. And a super chat from PC again. Thank you so much. He says, James, 400 years ago, men tried to attach wings to their arms and jumped off cliffs and perished.
That seems to me very dangerous. Leonardo da Vinci, 500 years ago, was working on flying machines, and he was getting the basic technology of things like helicopters and hang gliders and things like that, and he was analyzing the flight of birds very carefully. So I would call that science, but it was so nebulous and early in the science that I think it would be foolish and anti-life to have attached myself to wings and try to do it. It's a misunderstanding of science. But let me give a little asterisk, although foolish as it is, and I have to say it is foolish, to have tried this 400 or 500 years ago, where we did not understand it. Nonetheless, what the human imagination is such, human free will is such that we consider these possibilities, and we have these ambitions, these extraordinarily lofty ambitions that are where our imagination and our reason can take us. But our reason should also caution us that before the technology has been developed, it's a risky business. But there are rational risks to take. And in the early space program, people did die in the attempt to get to space and then get to the moon. It is a dangerous business sometimes, but those are calculated, rational risks in my view. And now it is relatively safe, and safe enough for people like Katy Perry to take pure tourist type trips to outer space. I think that's a wonderful thing. And when rich people start doing something, it's usually very, very expensive, as it is in this case. But as the costs come down because people are just doing it, soon it becomes more and more available to more and more people. And so one day, I'm not eager myself to get on a craft, although I admire the courage of people who do so. There is still some danger involved, but safe enough, I think, for someone like Katy Perry or William Shatner to do. And I think it's a kind of a cool thing to do. To hate it as such is to hate human progress, is to hate technology and science and the essence of the glory of man. It really is anti-human because it's anti-reason.
We also have another super chat from PC. Thank you so much. Some say Leonardo invented a way to do photography over 300 years before the invention of the first confirmed photo in 1825.
Leonardo was an astonishing human being and a universal genius in one sense. Where did his mind not go? Even if it was still just on paper, some of the things he was considering, just as hypotheses, are absolutely mind-blowing. What a genius. And he was Da Vinci, as the Renaissance man of the Renaissance, really says it all in the climax of the victory of Aristotle. Love of observation, careful observation, taking from those observations inferences, inductive inferences that taught Leonardo how birds fly, how potentially humans could fly. And that, what can you say? Glory to Leonardo, the great Aristotelian practitioner, whether he understood it or not. To some degree, I think he did, because there were Platonic elements to Leonardo's thought. The execution is just menial. The thought is all that counts. It's still a holdover from this Greek idea of pure thought being better, a Platonic idea, actually. But nonetheless, it also represents the effective triumph of Aristotelianism in Western thought.
And with that, you had a certain, what is the word for it? A sense of life in the first 15 minutes of the show. Now let's actually take a look at Candace.
But here's my bone to pick with Matt Walsh. We have a long-running beef on the topic of NASA and moon landings because he thinks they happened. And listen, when the guys did it, it was fake and gay. I'm sorry, Matt, and it's time for you to admit it. It was just as bad. You just weren't alive for it, okay? Homies were on the moon making phone calls before the time of cell phones, like, hey, what's up, Prez? It's me on the moon with the flag. No issues. First time we've ever flown this thing. Yeah, I don't know. We just got through the belt pretty easily. And until Matt Walsh accepts that the mission in 69 was also fake and gay, I don't care. I can't defend you. Even if I fully agree with you about Gayle King, I literally cannot defend you. Okay, you must come to terms with the fact that NASA and space missions have always been this fake and gay. You just weren't alive for the original ones, and you need to learn the history of.
Well, we'll go to the history in a bit. So she was talking about Matt Walsh of the Daily Wire, who also came out. I haven't watched what he specifically said about the Katy Perry and the Blue Origin sort of space mission. But at this point, I'm really thinking about what is her goal. What is she even like trying to do with her platform? Like, what is this amount of like conspiracism, amount of complete rejection of any? And when we talk about the sort of the idea of we went to the moon, like trying to put down sort of that achievement as that didn't happen. Trying to, I mean, making fun sort of the technology, which thank you, which also shows sort of her. She doesn't actually care to actually look into things because when she made the comment about sort of the radios, I'm like, and it's actually an interesting idea. How did the Apollo mission from the moon sort of send a radio message back to the Earth? That's actually a fun question. How did we figure that out? And it's not that difficult to figure it out. When you send out radio sort of transmission, you can just send it out through space. It's not like that. It is difficult to do, but it's not that complicated to sort of understand. And this, and saying they did it before cell phones. Yeah, there were radios and radio towers before cell phones. Imagine that.
There's this Italian scientist she may not have heard of, named Marconi, who 120 years ago developed wireless communication through radio waves and radiation. She does not understand. She is so ignorant. She is so cosmically ignorant. And within just a few years
just quickly, she's evading. She doesn't want
She's evading altogether, isn't she? No. And shortly after Marconi, it was no longer just a rare Marconi-gram thing you could send. We developed this technology of radio that makes the radio that she uses, or the television that she watches, or the internet that she's talking on possible. Absent satellites in space, absent radio communications, she could not be doing her podcast. Talk about the ultimate contradiction in terms. She is so contemptible. She's laughing about it. She's ridiculing it. She's calling it gay. She's calling it fake. Now think about it. Nothing could be more. Now, if there's any meaning to the term masculine, it involves the courage of those test pilots and those astronauts that made that possible. I can think of nothing more courageous. I can think of nothing more rational. Talk about the essence of what it is to be human. Forget, specifically masculine. But the people who go into space are courageous, absolutely taking risks. People died in the process. And so she's taking something that is absolutely heroic and masculine. And then more than that, she's laughing at it as fake. And even though we do have this progress that she can fully well understand, we developed radio more than 100 years ago, mechanized flight more than 100 years ago. About 100 years ago, someone invented the rocket. Now, I know that some of the first applications, the inventor didn't do this, but some of the first applications were these new Nazi rockets that rained terror on London during World War II. But the point is that we had to develop rocket. Was she denying that there's intercontinental ballistic missiles? Is she denying that there's satellites? When I was a kid, my dad, when we were out camping and the stars were clear and there's no interference from other light, my dad would point out to me, Jimmy, that's not a star, and that's a satellite. And if we had a powerful telescope, you could see that it is actually a man-made satellite in orbit around the Earth. And I could see it moving across the sky somewhat slowly. But he would say, that's a satellite. That is not a man-made satellite, not like the moon. But is she denying the existence of satellites that make her podcast possible? I mean, she's psychotic. Someone has said that religion is sort of self-aware psychosis. detachment from reality. This woman is a self-aware psychotic. She needs, in one sense, you could easily think that this woman, her brain is in outer space and she needs professional help because it's the psychosis. It's a kind of a religion. And in her case, it truly is a mysticism-induced psychosis. Psychosis being defined as a detachment from the facts of reality. But we not only had different missions that first got us into space and into orbit around the Earth, and then farther out, our early Apollo missions just orbited, the moon and came back. And then we had moon missions in 1969, which happened in my lifetime and I saw on television. And we had multiple such missions. And people died in the very process of trying to do this. As I say, they faked the deaths of these people? But in any event, we had real-time telemetry with this radio technology of them going on their way to the moon, being far away. It took a while to get there. And we had telemetry coming back from their trip to the moon. And then on the moon, there was real-time telemetry. Forget even the astronaut witnesses and so forth. But they brought back rocks. They brought how many museums can you go into today and see this is a moon rock brought back from the moon by people who've been to the moon? So we brought back material. We not only that, and I hate to even get to this because it's absurd to even get to this point, but they actually, even in one of the moon missions, left a mirror on the moon. Why? So that we on Earth could point a laser at the moon, bounce back the laser so that we can measure with precision the distance, and it changes over time, the distance between the Earth and the moon. So anyone, if they want to, and if they have a high-powered enough telescope, can see the junk we left on the moon and can bounce a laser off the moon because of a mirror we left up there. There are 1,000 different ways you can confirm that human beings have been to the moon. She is denying the evidence of the senses. She's denying ordinary tests that anyone can do. She's denying the entire progress, step-by-step progress that got us to the point where we have a technology that allows us to go to the moon, including the satellite technology that makes her podcast even possible. It's absolute insanity. It's a self-induced psychosis on the part of Candace Owens. And like some savage child, some primitive Stone Age idiot, she laughs at it. She laughs in the face of the greatest of human achievements. She laughs in the face of science. She laughs in the face of technology. And even more basically, she laughs at the process of reason and the ability to confirm this for herself. It is absolutely psychosis, self-induced. Not maybe a psychosis she couldn't do something about. She could if she attended properly and used her reason properly, rather than evading based on her bizarre religious beliefs. The woman is absolutely out of touch by volitional choice, out of touch with reality by volitional choice, evading tons of evidence, a mountain of evidence that easily demonstrates. We have witnesses, we have film, we have moon rocks brought back, we have a mirror there that you can bounce a laser off of. Now, who the heck could have put a mirror there that hadn't been there before? Or if you have a high enough powered telescope, you can actually see remnants of the stuff we left on the moon. I mean, in 100 different ways you can verify this. And think about all the other unmanned space missions we did. We've landed robot ships now repeatedly on Mars. On Mars for the last 40 some years now, we've been able to send robot ships to Mars and get telemetry back from Mars. Or how about the deep space? They haven't landed on some other world, but deep space missions like Voyager that send back telemetry of the outer solar system. Think of all that she's denying. And now, if she were an engineer and had the first interest in the engineering that made that possible, she could discuss that with the folks at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and how all this is possible scientifically in engineering. And that proof in itself could demonstrate to her, no, this is how it happens. It uses basic Newtonian physics to do this. This is the engineering that makes it possible. But no, all of that she evades. All of that she evades. She is a humanity hater. She hates herself. She hates the essence of what makes humans so amazing, extraordinary, and unique, our rational faculty. She hates human achievement. She is a despicable human being. And when she is confronted with real heroism, the courage, the calculated risk of going into space, She treats it with utter contempt. She treats real values, as we were discussing earlier. ARCUK does seminars on Leonard Peikoff's courses. We're doing unity and epistemology and ethics today. We're talking about the two concepts of value. Her values are anti-value. Her heroes are villains. She is that despicable. She is that despicable.
We have a super chat from Race. Thank you so much. He says, I think she's just a liar. Her career depends on, or rather, he's been a member for 15 months, I should say. I think she's just a liar. Her career depends on lying about reality. When you get paid to fake reality, facing it becomes a liability. Well, we'll go to the next clip at the end of the show, apparently. James, can you go a bit longer?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I've said what I have to say about Candace Owens, who was an evil human being. Full stop. But so as I've said that, let's continue to listen to her evil.
And I think in the next clip, it will be apparent that this is not simply just sort of lying or just sort of grifting. I think there is a philosophy behind it. And as you said, or there are values behind it, but they're very anti-life, very anti-man, anti-humanity. We have a super chat from PC. Thank you so much. He says, James, it's sad there are so many Earth-like worlds. Some probably have life on them, but to reach them, we need a far greater technology than now, nearest in over 20 light years away, a journey of 400,000 years. That's 130 trillion miles. Well, do not start the next another conversation of if it's probable that life is on another planet. But
well, we have recently, just in the last week or so, they've made public the discovery of a very, very distant planet, and it's a big planet. The size of Neptune, that is basically, from what we can tell, covered in liquid water, which is one of the obvious, from what we understand about life, one of the preconditions for life. But they also found this gas, this chemical on this planet, which on Earth, as far as we know, is only created by living processes. And so it suggests that there could be a whole bunch of algae. Now, there are several things that are still questionable here. Is there some natural, non-organic process, non-life process that can create this chemical that we've detected on this planet so far away? And we are nowhere near getting to the point where we can get to such a place. So it is just theoretical science at this point. But one day it might not be so theoretical, and I want to know anyway. But we're gathering more and more evidence that at least in some places there might be life. It's at least a growing possibility. No longer, I think, can we say that it's an arbitrary possibility, because we have enough evidence of its possibility now to really suggest that, yeah, there could be all kinds of planets out there with at least life on it, at least algae or something. Yeah, extraordinary.
I mean, when it comes to sort of, as PC said, the sort of sad thing about space travel, I think the sort of right now, the physical limitations, the fact that things in space are so far away, and that any sort of, and that there are physical limitations about how fast you can travel. When you read like any fiction that involves sort of space travel, they all figure out a way to sort of get beyond the sort of physical limitations, either, traveling through wormholes or some things like that. Because like the distances themselves, I mean, even distance from the Earth to the moon is like pretty problematic. I mean, people should check out The Moon is a Harsh Mistress, which is a really great sort of novel. And the big thing there is like it's really hard to even transfer things to the moon. But
when you're there, oxygen and water, and there ain't no oxygen and water there. They don't have an atmosphere, and they don't have it's so cold and dry, no internal magmatic activity to create a magnetosphere. It's covered with craters, because it's not Earth. It is hostile to life on Earth. To make a place like the moon or Mars habitable, we're still even not there. I'm a terrestrial being, and where my values are, I still kind of belong on Earth, and I'm still not at the point mentally where I can imagine that being the realistic thing, at least tomorrow. On the other hand, human possibilities are limitless, given this capacity we call reason and this exercise of free will. Someday, I have little doubt, there will be humans on those places, even with the huge challenges, and I mean huge, and so huge now that it really isn't realistic to think of humans settling Mars at this point. I don't think it is realistic. On the other hand, have we opened up again a non-arbitrary possibility for the distant human future? Absolutely, an exciting one. And it shows the open-ended possibilities of reason.
Well, it's not filibuster. Let's listen to a bit more Candace.
Of NASA, of the Apollo programs, which were occult and satanic. It was literally meant to be an antichrist movement to make people believe in man. It's a fact. I'm going to show you guys. It's like, you can look this up anywhere. Look up Jack Parsons and the Apollo program. They just wanted people to believe in scientific advancement. The guy who created the Apollo program was this guy, Jack Parsons. Can you pull up this clip, Skylar? You know, this is from a podcast, The Science History Institute Museum and Library. This is one of their podcasts, and you scroll down here, and you again are probably gonna have to make this bigger for my eyes, but at the top here, you know, Jack Parsons was a brilliant rocket scientist, but he lived a wild lifestyle with a devil may care attitude. He was pretty relaxed about safety and dabbled in drugs, occult practices, and sex cult rituals. It would all eventually catch up with him, though, and quite literally they were throwing these sex rituals, and he believed that he had summoned the devil, and the devil told him that he needed to create.
Okay, we can do next what the devil told her, or told him. So, I mean, first of all, the idea that NASA was this sort of like satanic organization created to make believe in man, which, first of all, that actually sounds kind of good. Organization that, you know, it sort of sounds like what Ayn Rand was trying to do. You know, sounds pretty good. Like, we should believe in man, or they wanted to believe in scientific advancement, and again, she's mocking that. But
this is why I call her evil. Her fundamental motive here is to belittle humanity, to attack her own species, and its most distinctive aspect, reason. And science is the demonstration of the power of reason. This woman is anti-reason explicitly. This woman is anti-human explicitly. The anti-reason is the anti-man, is the anti-life. She is a death, she herself worships at a death cult. Now, the vast majority of people who work for NASA as scientists, engineers, I mean, Newton, let's go back to Isaac Newton, whose basic physics makes all this possible. He was a kind of Christian. Now, I know a heretical kind of Christian, non-Trinitarian, but most of the people involved in the science and the technological developments were Jewish, Christian, people with standard religious views. Some of them were atheists. Many of the scientists in the 20th century who were involved were simply atheists. They weren't Satanists. She finds one guy that worked at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory who was friendly with...
But by the way, he didn't work at NASA. He died before NASA was even founded.
He died before, but someone who, yeah, exactly, but someone associated with, right? She finds one person associated with who may have been, that had nothing to do with the development of space travel. Nothing. His other beliefs, any more than Christianity had anything to do with the Christian scientists, or Judaism with the Jewish scientists that helped make it possible. You know, the astronaut goes to the moon and he says a prayer. Right? He wanted to insert God in there. Was that satanic, Candace? No. She picks one guy involved in the process, and who had some association with Satanism, and that's it. It condemns the whole thing, makes the whole thing satanic as far as she's concerned. She is a wackadoodle. All these people had different philosophies. And to blame the whole system on Satanism is, again, a hasty generalization, as we would say in the science of induction, inductive logic. But it's utterly bizarre. Obviously, Satanism will not get you to the moon any more than Christianity or Judaism will get you to the moon. It is reason, but she put her finger on that too. For her, I suppose reason, science, and technology are all satanic anyway, whether it's done by an atheist who has contempt for Satanism or a Christian who thinks I'm still in touch with reality and I'm engaged in science and technology. No, it's utterly two different things. And the aspect, though, that she's going to focus on here is reason and science. And I guess for her, all of reason and science is somehow connected to Satanism. This woman deserves to go back into a time machine where starvation and famine were common because science had not reached the level it has in the last 300 or 400 years. She deserves to be scraping a living with stone tools. She literally does. She does not deserve to get antibiotics when she gets an infection. She deserves the results of living in a non-rational, humanity-hating world. She absolutely does. If you sent her back in a time machine 300 or 400 years, her Christian friends would have burnt her at the stake. And I'm very tempted to to hope that, although time travel is not metaphysically possible, you can't go back into the past. I know that. Time travel into the past is simply a metaphysical contradiction. But if it were, I would send her a one-way ticket to the past before reason has transformed human life on Earth. She deserves not the podcast she's using, but she also does not deserve the medicine that probably made her life possible.
Well, while time travel to the past is metaphysically impossible, time travel to the future might be possible. So maybe we can, move beyond sort of the world that has Candace Owens or that has people that want to listen to Candace Owens. Just a quick, we'll go to the last clip.
I just want to stress her evil. This is not innocent. She hates humanity. She hates everything that has made human life better on Earth. That is to say, it comes from reason. And so she and science and her contempt for science, I think we should take away every scientific element of her life. Any medicine she might use, the podcast she's broadcasting on, the automobile that takes her to work, she deserves to be living in the Stone Age. She deserves to be living in the Stone Age. She is an evil human being. She's not mistaken. She's merely mistaken. She's evil.
And again, to talk about her sort of wanting to basically propagandize or not being interested in truth or finding about anything. So, she talked about the moon child, which I think the assumption was that he wanted to go to the moon to conceive a child on the moon or something like that. I don't know what she was even trying to infer to, but the idea of a moon child, apparently it came from a novel in 1910s, and the guy tried to commit some ritual. Moonchild was supposed to be some messiah. I'm not going into Satanism. I don't care for the most part. But again, even if you look into things she says on surface level, it's clear that nothing she says actually corresponds with anything that was even said in the past, let alone trying to have some talk about the present in any way.
Because her savage mentality cannot conceive of a non-mystical understanding of the moon. She really is trapped back in the Stone Age where people thought the moon is a divine being or some magical entity. And so, so she's at that level. She won't even entertain a non-mystical consideration of the moon itself. She is she's a knuckle-dragging Neanderthal on purpose. Intentionally so, in the 21st century, engaged in a podcast that depends on satellite and radio technology. No, this woman is truly evil, and she deserves to have every benefit of science stripped away from her, as she's attacking it and attacking the root of it. She's anti-reason, therefore anti-man, therefore anti-life. She is the enemy of life. I can't put it any more clearly because she is so explicit in putting her finger right on those issues.
We have a super chat from PC. Thank you so much. He says, James, if time travel was possible, I'd go back in time to stop JFK's death. But somebody wrote a book about that. Stephen King wrote a book called, I think, 22/11/1963, or maybe just 63, where somebody went back into the past to stop JFK's death, and apparently that led to nuclear holocaust. So
it would be very, very tricky and challenging, but it's too logically paradoxical, impossible. In fact, A would have to not be A for humans to be able to go back in time.
So people can check out. It's a pretty interesting book, sort of if you like Stephen King, I think you'll like that book. But let's watch the last part.
Okay.
A moon child. Next thing you know, they're telling us we made it to the moon. I mean, you got to look into Jack Parsons and the origin of NASA. I'm telling you, space has always been exceedingly fake and gay. It was fake and gay when the men did it, and it's now fake and gay because the women did it. So go back and watch our NASA episode to learn more about the establishment of the Apollo program and why it's always been a cult and satanic, and about devil worship and about the Antichrist. It's just undeniable. It's like a part of history that's just real. So I'm challenging you, Matt Walsh, once again, until you say, Candace, you were right. Space is not real. I'm just a guy and grew up with little astronaut figurines, and I can't let it go because a little boy in me doesn't want to say no. All right, guys.
See, to her, there's no belief that is not mystical. She is herself a cultist, a knuckle-dragging, mystical witch doctor cultist. She is a savage, the lowest level, who cannot imagine rational truth. And she's attacking anything as being a cult. For her, there is no non-cult belief system. And so she's trapped in that view. And she's trapped in that view by volition in the 21st century when there's all this evidence to oppose her. She is worse than an idiot. She is worse than an idiot. She is a malevolent force on this planet. She's evil. And her hatred of her own species is just dripping. Her hatred of man's means of cognition is just dripping off of her. To her, I'm sure I'm a cultist. But of course, I believe in individualism and reason, and so I'm the very opposite. It's a stolen concept in her use of it, right? She would absolutely not understand anything except cultism. She is the ultimate cultist. You'd have to be an irrational cultist to believe what she believes. To her, all belief is cult. So she assaults humanity as such, as she assaults the basic means of knowing, our basic means of surviving. She is a self-loathing human, the lowest sort of human. It was excusable perhaps centuries ago. It is no longer excusable. She has tons and tons of evidence that can conclusively prove to her that everything that she just spouted was absolute bullshit. If I had my way, yes, on one level, we shouldn't be giving her any attention at all. In another way, it is the depths of her evil that require us to give this attention. She is that detached from reality. She is a voluntary psychotic.
Yeah, and again, calling it faking gay. Again, what's wrong with gay anyway? But
yeah, I mean, it shows her bigotry.
Yeah. Well, she is Catholic, so that's on par.
Yeah, no, she's a racist and she's a bigot. She's a bigot against anyone who's not involved in her cult. Obviously, it's despicable. And there's nothing. And some of the most courageous and strong people I've known have been homosexuals. But it takes the masculine virtues of courage and dedication to accomplish this. It is even in her slime of gay people, which is a disgusting slime. As I say, some of the most courageous men I've known were homosexual, and women I've known were homosexual. So, but the point is, if there is any meaning to masculinity and connection to courage, she's got it completely upside down. Her values are utterly inverted. Yes, of course, she's a tribalist bigot. She's a racist. She's a homophobe, bigot. Absolutely. And it's despicable. But on the other hand, she's describing something as gay, which in fact takes enormous courage. She's describing as a cult something that takes careful, critical reasoning. She's upside down, inside out, on purpose. She's a life hater, a humanity hater. She is, her cult is the death cult. And she's doing it using satellite technology and radio communication in the process of denouncing those things. Unbelievable.
Somebody's trying to say how Candace was right on everything. I'll just cover this. The first thing that he says she was right on the COVID shot. In the last few years, Republicans are dying about like 45% higher rate than they used to before the COVID vaccine shot, most likely as a result of not taking the vaccine. So anything that was said before, the idea that people who take the shot would like die, like I'm supposed to be dead at this point. I think I took like 2 boosters on top of that. So
Well, no, the point, no, it has been proved. Yeah, of course, every vaccine will have side effects. Some people will be sensitive to vaccines. Vaccination in general has a certain risk to it. On the other hand, the COVID vaccine has been shown to be generally safe again and again and again. There should be millions of people dead and sick because hundreds of millions of people got the vaccine. So just from basic, again, using basic data available to anyone, we can demonstrate that the COVID vaccine is not the deadly peril that she claims it is. It's actually been proven to be largely safe. And no amount of evidence and no amount of scientific evidence will get it through her skull either. You can't even talk reason with subtle distinctions like, well, yeah, some people might have negative reactions. That's true of all vaccines, but basically it's safe. The polio vaccine, the smallpox vaccine have saved far, far more lives than caused problems with people with a reaction. Ditto the COVID vaccine. It is generally safe. And no matter what the scientific demonstration of the safety of the COVID vaccine you present to her, she is a rank mystic who hates reason, who hates technology, and thereby hates mankind in general. No, she's wrong in all of her most famous assertions these days. She is psychotically wrong, and a self-induced psychotic wrongness, I might add.
yeah, I mean, vaccines are the prime example of sort of like suffering from success when something is so good at like eradicating something that we forget about the life before we had those technologies. So it's like, well, why do we even need them at this point? And yeah, like we obviously like we see the deaths or sort of the problems from people taking the vaccines and not getting the right or sort of getting wrong reactions to it. You don't see the millions of people dying because we didn't have any vaccine.
It's
But
Looney
yeah,
Tunes. It's self-induced psychosis. And no amount of data, no amount of rational thought will persuade her, get her off her madness, her self-induced cult, man-hating madness. But if she were taken seriously, millions of human lives would be wiped off the planet. If anyone takes her approach seriously, they hate humanity to the point that they would advocate policies that would be the death of millions upon millions of human beings. That is why I call her evil.
and just the last thing that she said in sort of the end of the clip that she was sort of making fun of Matt Walsh for sort of believing in the moon landing because when he was a child he like idolized an astronaut or something like that, and that is the attack of values. That is the point at which sort of making fun of somebody's ideals, making fun of or sort of making fun of the idea that somebody's ideals are this worldly, are things that are actually achievable instead of some space daddy in the skies. That I think makes her the most vile, the attack on personal and worldly values.
Of course, she's an anti-Semitic racist. Of course, she's an anti-man hater. Of course, she's a science despiser. She deserves to go back. That's why I say she deserves a world without any of the science and technology she hates. She deserves a world in which religious bigotry of the kind she advocates was a daily phenomenon. No, she is that evil. To counter this, ladies and gentlemen, I can only recommend any and all of the works of the philosopher Ayn Rand. She, in this context, Ayn Rand wrote a remarkable essay. She was an invited VIP to watch the Apollo 11 launch in Florida. She and her husband went and witnessed the launch of the Apollo mission, and she gave her own eyewitness account of it, which is one of the most inspirational things Ayn Rand ever wrote. She actually developed a correspondence with one of the astronauts on that original mission. She became friendly with one of the astronauts involved in the Apollo 11 mission. But Ayn Rand's defense of reason, Ayn Rand's defense of humanity, Ayn Rand's understanding of values, all of that is a refutation of this very evil woman's position. She is a knuckle dragging Neanderthal, but on purpose in the 21st century. As I say, she is the polar opposite of the philosopher Ayn Rand in every fundamental.
Yeah, and last thing that this reminded me of is a show called Castlevania. I'm not sure if you've seen it. It's a show on Netflix. For those who haven't seen it, in like the first episode, it shows about how it takes place in the Middle Ages, and a woman, a doctor, or the person who is trying to become a doctor, she really wants to save more lives, and she realizes because of the middle age nature, the sort of mystical nature, nobody cares about science. So the only person she could learn it from was Dracula. And she is, of course, burned at the stake for this, not for associating with Dracula, but for them finding her tools, her medicine. And I think Candace would be among the people taking that woman to the stake if she was living in that age.
She would have been hauling Giordano Bruno to the stake, not for his religious ideas, but for his daring ideas about science and space. If Galileo had not recanted, officially recanted, she would have been happy to send the father of modern physics to the stake to be burnt alive as well, and perhaps slowly tortured before then. That is the mentality we're talking about here. Only that mentality in the 21st century. That is the scope of this woman's evil. And there's no other word but evil to describe Candace Owens.
Well, we'll continue covering, and hopefully we won't have to talk about her again, because people will realize the fault of their ways and start watching us instead of her. But until then, we'll continue fighting the good fight. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode of The Daily Objective and the reality show as well. James, any last thoughts?
No, I think I said it. I think my opinion on Candace Owens is now registered for all time. Yeah.
And with that, thank you, James, for joining me today. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and bye-bye.
Be well. Happy Easter.